Hello all, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching this video and whatever country. My name is Dina Akesha and this is a new video about recurring decimals. And again, I'm sorry about my handwriting and I hope it gets better during this video, okay? Today we're going to discuss recurring decimals. And again, all these videos are part of the O-level edexcel math curriculum. Now, before we get into our topic today, this video is not going to be as long as all of my videos, but I hope it's useful. Okay, now first, let's just remember what are the classifications or what are the types of decimals. Decimals mainly classify into two main categories, the terminating decimals. And what is a terminating decimal? A terminating decimal is a decimal in which you can count its decimal places. For example, 0.75, the decimal places end, okay? Or 1.432, for instance. فالterminating decimal من الآخر هو الديسيمال اللي بيخلص اللي هو أنا أقدر أعد فيه كم رقم. And then we have the second type, which is the non-terminating decimal. And of course, the non-terminating decimal is a decimal that doesn't end, okay? And the non-terminating decimals classify into two types. The non-terminating, non-recurring, okay? In non-terminating decimal هو الديسيمال اللي ما بيخلصش. أحيانا كده نلاقي الكالكوليتر مليانة أرقام كتيرة جدا. For example, an example of a non-terminating, non-recurring is the pi. So if you press on your calculator to get this symbol pi, and you press on this button, S to D, it changes into this decimal, 3.14159, and so on. So this decimal doesn't end, and the digits, as you can see, they do not repeat. فلو السكرين بتاعت الكالكوليتر بتاعتنا كبيرة جدا هنلاقي الأرقام مكملة يعني معانا مش هتخلص. And then we have, I'm going to use another color, and I'm going to write this in capital letters. We have the recurring decimals. And what is a recurring decimal? A recurring decimal is a decimal in which it has one digit repeated as follows, like 0.11111. Or sometimes you might have two digits repeated, 0.232323, or you might have more than two digits, for instance, a decimal like this, 419, 419, 419, and so on. يبقى non-recurring, non-terminating هو الديسيمال اللي مش بيخلص بس بيتكرر. Non-terminating هو أنا قلت non-recurring؟ لا. Non-terminating بس recurring. Recurring يعني أنا بلاقي زي ما أنتم شايفين كده هنا معايا حلوين a number that is repeated. ممكن يبقى رقم واحد repeated زي 0.1 دي أو 0.232323 أو زي third example we might have more than one digit repeated. So, what is the objective of this slide? The objective of this slide is to know what is meant by a recurring decimal and to know the shortcut of writing these recurring decimals. There is a shortcut for writing these decimals, and this shortcut is, يعني مثلا هنا, for example, the 1 is repeated. So you only write the digit that is repeated and you put a dot on top of it. Now, in the American system and in the national system, they put a bar or a dash. But in the British system, they use a dot. أنا بصراحة بسميها نظام البطحة. البطحة system. يقول لك إيه الراجل ده على دماغه بطحة. يعني زي ما يكون حد ضربه على دماغه. So 0.1 with the بطحة or with the dot, this means that the 1 is repeated. هنا مثلا in the second example over here 0.232323, if you want to change this into the Batha system or if you want to write the shortcut of this number, now you have two digits repeated, so you write both the digits and you put two dots on top, as you can see. Now, what if I have more than what if I have more than two digits repeated? If I have more than two digits repeated, what I do is I don't need to put dots on all of the digits. I just put on the first and on the last. This means that the whole block is repeated. Let me give you another example here on the side. If I have, for instance, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. So this block, which is made out of 4 numbers, is repeated. Now, how do I write the shortcut? Okay, you just put a dot at the first number and at the last number. Not because the 2 and the 3 have no dots on them, means that they are not repeated. No, they are repeated as well. يبقى اللي أنا كنت بقوله هنا إنه لو أنا عندي أكتر من رقمين متكررين ما بحطش النقطة على كل الأرقام، بحط على الأولاني والآخراني. فده معناه إن الثلاثة دول repeated. هنا نفس الكلام، ده معناه إن البلوك ده كله على بعضه repeated. And that was the first part of the day, which is knowing what is meant by recurring decimals and what is the shortcut of writing these decimals. Now, what is required from our topic today? We are required to change the recurring decimals into fractions, but not without the not with the use of the calculator. You are required to change recurring decimals into fractions algebraically. يعني إيه algebraically؟ يعني I am required to show certain steps to show how are we going to change these recurring decimals into fractions. This is the objective of our topic today, changing recurring decimals into fractions algebraically. Now, our topic is divided into 3 parts. The first part is supposed to be the easy part, okay? And I'm going to give examples on it. So let's start with the basic examples, okay? And let's remember, the idea is changing recurring to fractions. And this is case number 1. And of course, I always classify my topics in 2 cases, case 1, case 2, case 3. So this is case A, the happy face, although this face looks weird, but this is supposed to be a happy face. Okay, let me give you the 3 basic examples of the happy face. مثلا, for example, I am required to change 0.3 dot to a fraction. I am required to change 0.69 dot to a fraction. I am required to change 0.316 مثلا 316 no ايه دول 316 into a fraction. Good. Okay. Now, before we get into how to solve these sort of questions, let me just give you a reminder of the difference between multiples of 10 and the powers of 10. The multiples of 10 are simply the numbers in the times table 10. جدول الضرب بتاع 10. 10 times 1, 10 times 2, 10 times 3, 10, 20, 30, 40, and so on. Do I need the multiples of 10? لا. طيب, what are the powers of 10? The multiples of 10 are 10 times 1, 10 times 2, 10 times 3. The powers of 10 are 10 power 1, 10 power 2, 10 power 3, and so on. So the powers of 10 are 10, 100, 1,000, 1 and 4 zeros, and so on. And we will need the powers of 10 in our topic today. Okay, now let's start with how to solve. Okay, the question usually says, change this to a fraction or show that it simplifies into whatever. Okay, how do I solve these 3 questions? Okay, and why are they considered the happy face? Now, to solve these questions, I am going to create 2 equations and subtract them from one another. I am going to create 2 equations and subtract them from one another. I am going to create 2 equations and subtract them from one another. Now, the second equation, let me just highlight it. فين الhighlighter? فين الhighlighter? The second equation is a fixed equation in which what I call الأصفر ده الأساس equation. الأساس equation. Or the basic equation. So the second equation is the base equation in which I will need. اللي أنا بسميها الأساس equation. إيه الأساس equation دي? Or what is equation number 2? You select, for instance, the letter X, and you take the decimal and you expand it. You expand your decimal. Okay, now as we said, to solve these questions, we are going to create two equations. The second equation is a basic equation, which is you select any letter that you want. We usually select the letter X, and you take your decimal and you expand it. 0.3 dot means that the 3 is repeated. Oh, you can write 3 3s, 4 3s, whatever. This equation is what I call the base equation or الأساس equation. Okay? طيب, what about the second example over here? What is my أساس equation or what is my base equation? You select any letter that you want. It doesn't have to be the letter X, but يعني, we usually use the letter X. And then you take the decimal and you expand it. Since this decimal has 2 digits and both digits have two dots on top of them, when I expand it as blocks, يعني 0.69, and then write another block. If you wish to write another block, مفيش أي مشكلة. يبقى أنا باخد الديسيمال وبفكه. I expand it بالشكل ده. What about the third example over here? Again, the second equation is the base equation or the أساس equation. You take the decimal and you expand it. 0.316, this is one block. If you wish to write a second block, okay. If you wish to write a third block, it's totally up to you. So this is the second equation, which is the أساس equation. Type. What about equation number 1? D. Listen بقى carefully. Equation number 1 is going to be the أساس equation multiplied by a power of 10. Is going to be the أساس equation multiplied by a power of 10. We either multiply by 10, or I multiply by 100, or I multiply by 1,000. When I explain case B, you will understand why do we multiply by powers of 10. Yeah, but the first equation will be this equation over here multiplied by 10 or 100 or 1,000. How do I decide which power of 10 will I use? Let's look at this example over here. Since I have one digit repeated, so I multiply the أساس by 10. Since I have one digit repeated, I multiply the base equation by 10. And I multiply the whole equation, meaning I multiply the left-hand side and the right-hand side. So 10 times x is 10x. And when you write equation number 1, please make sure that you align it properly, meaning the terms, the algebraic terms above each other, and then the equal sign. And then you multiply this decimal by 10. You can either do it with the calculator, or since this video is for year 10 students, then you'll know that when you multiply by a 10, you can move the decimal to the right 1 unit. So when you multiply the decimal by 10, you end up with 3.333. You can put as many 3s as you want because you need to remember that they are repeated, they are recurring, okay? And then, as we said earlier, when I did both my equations, I know already that I'm going to subtract them. Now, how do I subtract? You subtract the like terms. 10x minus 1x is 9x. And then equals, of course, you subtract the whole numbers, 3 minus 0, which is 3. Now, when you look carefully, you'll find that the decimal part is the same. So when you subtract, they will be canceled immediately. And these two equations have combined into this orange over here, which is super simple. Now I can easily solve for x. So x is equal to 3 over 9. And always remember to simplify it. And the simplest form of 3 over 9, you can just place it on the calculator, press equal, you will end up with 1 over 3. Now, if you wish to check that your answer is correct, which is what I'll do right now, 1 divided by 3, press on the S to D button. You'll find that it changes into 0.3333. I always get this question from my students. Yeah, Miss, why do we do all this? Now, you have to do all this because these questions will come in your final exam, and these are the steps that you have to show. فإحنا مش بنشرح الكلام ده علشان نستعرض قدراتنا في الشرح، إحنا بنشرح الكلام ده عشان الكلام ده هتكتبوه في الامتحان. تمام؟ And this was example number 1. هاخد بس بق شاي بلبن. شاي بلبن ده نعمة من نعم ربنا. Okay. Moving on to example number 2. The question says, change the recurring decimal into a fraction. Now, as we said, you create two equations. The second equation is what we call the assess equation or the base equation. And the first equation, as we said, is going to be the assess multiplied by a power of 10. Now, what do you think this time? We're going to multiply by 10 or 100 or 1,000? Good. Since I have two digits repeated, so I multiply the assess equation by 100. So basically, one digit repeated, multiply by 10. Two digits repeated, multiply by 100. Now, how do I multiply? Remember that you multiply both sides of the equation. 100 times x is 100x. Please be organized when you're writing your equations. 100 times this decimal, okay? Now, you need to either do it mentally or with the calculator. It's totally up to you. But again, all you need to do is move the decimal twice to the right-hand side. So you end up with 69.696969. Am I allowed to add more digits as I did over here? Yes, of course, because it's a recurring decimal. Okay, what do I do next? As we said, we subtract. And when we subtract, why is it going to be easy? Because as you can see, the decimal parts are the same. So when I subtract, I will immediately lose this decimal part. How do I subtract? 100 minus 1, which is 99x. And then you subtract the whole numbers, of course. 69 minus 0 is 69, with decimals, مع السلامة. Now, you solve as an equation. Remember that the 99 is multiplied. So when I move it to the other side, it moves by division. So 69 divided by 99. Let's do simplest form on the calculator. You end up with 23 over 33. Now let's change to decimal, and you'll find that the calculator gives 69696969. Now the last digit of the calculator is 7. Meaning what? Meaning that the calculator rounds the last digit. That's all. But if the calculator is continuous, you will keep on getting 69, 69, 69. Now, I guess now you can solve the last question on your own, which is 316. And remember, we said earlier in the video that when you have more than two digits repeated, you only put the dots at the first and at the last, meaning that the whole block is repeated. Now, in this case over here, no, let me just write this. Hina, we have two digits repeated. Now, let me be very specific. The first two digits are repeated. Here, the first three digits are repeated, meaning that all the numbers that are written in case number 1, all the numbers are repeated. So definitely, since I have 3 digits repeated, meaning I will multiply here by 1,000. Multiply left-hand side, right-hand side. So 1,000 times x is 1,000x. 1,000 times the decimal is 316.316.316, and so on. Subtract, decimal parts are the same, مع السلامة. Subtract the x, so 999x equals to 316. And then x is 316 over 999. Let's see if we have simplest form. Actually, we don't. And if you change to decimal, you will find that the decimal is 316, 316, 316, and so on. And this is case number 1, as you can see, in which we have either the first digit is repeated, or the first 2 are repeated, or the first 3 are repeated. Now, what if I have the first 4 repeated? If you have the first 4 repeated, then you multiply by 1,000. And let me remind you that we always create 2 equations and we subtract them from one another. In the first case, which is the happy case, the assess equation or the base equation is equation number 2. And equation number 1 is the assess times 10 times 100 times 1,000, and so on. Moving on to, let me just erase this. Moving on to the second case, which is case B. And unfortunately, this is the case that you always get in exams, case 2, okay? But we cannot move on to case 2 unless I explain case 3. So let me give you 3 examples again over here. For instance, مثلا 0.0, كام مثلا 0.05 for example dot حاجة زي كده or 1.23 and the dot goes over here and let me give you another example مثلا 0.1235 and the dots go over here. Guys, I'm just selecting random numbers, okay? So it's just the thing is I'm trying to just explain the concept over here. Now, if you try and compare between case A and case B, you'll find that in case B, not all the digits written are repeated. There are digits that are not repeated. إيه الفرق ما بين case A و case B؟ case A و case B, case A كل الأرقام اللي مكتوبة متكررة. case B في رقم واقع مش متكرر. يعني let's مثلا highlight the numbers that are not repeated. So this is not repeated, this is not repeated, and this is not repeated, of course. These two are not repeated as well. So this is case B, okay? Now, how do I solve case B? Again, we create two equations and we subtract them from one another. Same concept. Again, we create two equations, we subtract from one another. We create two equations and we subtract from one another. But in case B, your assess equation is not going to be one of them. The base equation is not going to be one of them. Now, I need you to pay real attention in case number B. عايزاكم تركزوا معايا قوي في case B عشان في case B بقى هنفهم احنا ليه بنعمل اصلا times 10 و times 100 و times 1000 والكلام ده. We are going to understand in case B why do we multiply by a 10 or 100 or 1,000 or so on. Now, let me just actually, I'm going to change the setting. I'm going to solve 4 examples. So let's just put this over here, 4, 5, 6. Let me put the 6 هنا, مثلا, for example. And then let me give you another example over here, which is 1.2345, and the 2 dots over here. Let's erase this one. Okay, that's it. Okay, now let's see. Okay, now as we said, the two equations in which we're going to create in this part, none of them contain the SS equation or the base equation. Type. Let's write the SS equation of this. SS equation or the base equation. Okay, now I'm trying to mix between Arabic and English in case someone doesn't fully understand Arabic. Okay. So let's write the base equation over here, which is x equals, now remember that the dot is only on the 5, so the 5 only is repeated. So it's going to be 0.05555. So this is your SS equation. Now, as we said, the SS equation is usually multiplied by a power of 10, which is 10, 100, 1,000, and so on. Now let's understand why do we multiply by 10 or 100 or 1,000 or whatever. For 2 reasons. We multiply by a power of 10 to get the furthest repeated digit before the point. ليه أنا بعمل times 10 و 100 و 1000 الكلام ده كله؟ علشان أشوف مين آخر رقم متكرر. آخر رقم متكرر ده لازم أجيبه هنا قبل البوينت. أروح أشوف the last digit repeated. I have to get it before the decimal point. So in this example over here, the last digit repeated is the second. So I have to multiply by 100. It's the second, so I multiply by 100. 100 times x is 100x. And you multiply normally as we did in case number 1. Let me just take a sip of my tea. And then 100 times this decimal is going to be, as we said, you move the decimal to the right twice, or you can do it with a calculator, it's up to you. It's going to be 5.5555. You can put as many 5s as you want. I mean, in this part. Okay, so the first reason I multiply by a power of 10 is to get all the repeated digits before the point. Okay, let's see. In case number 1, I used to take the SS equation, okay, إيه اللي أنا بعمله ده? I used to take the SS equation and place it over here. But I will not do it in this case. Why? Because if you look at the decimal part, you will find that the decimals are not exactly the same. You can do it, by the way, but I don't prefer it because we are going to move on to part C. And in part C, we're going to move on to the algebraic questions. And in the algebraic questions, the decimal parts have to be the same. So before I take the decision to put the SS equation over here, I must make sure that the decimal parts are the same so that when I subtract them, I get rid of them immediately. عشان يروحوا مع السلامة. By comparing these two decimal parts, you will find that this 0 is extra, okay? Now I need to get rid of this 0. Since I have the 0 extra, so I multiply again by 10. يبقى أنا هنا عندي لما جيت قارنت الديسيمالز ببعض لقيت إن أنا في عندي رقم كده زيادة اللي هو الزيرو، رقم واحد زيادة. فبدل في عندي رقم واحد بس هو اللي زيادة، I multiply this equation again by 10. So the second reason I multiply by a power of 10 is that to make the decimals, the decimal part, the same. So that when I subtract, it's easy for me. So 10 times x is 10x. And then 10 times this decimal is going to be 0.5555. And then I do the same exact steps as part 1. 100 minus 10 is 90x. And then 5 minus 0 is 5. And the decimals, goodbye. مع السلامة. So for x, so x is 5 over 90. You need to find the simplest form immediately. 5 divided by 90 is 1 over 18. Now, please remember that the good thing about this topic is that you can always check that your answer is correct by pressing on S to D. Now, when I press on S to D on my calculator, I did get 0.055555. And as we said earlier, why does it say 6 at the end of calculator? It's because it's just rounds. Okay, one more example. And remember, the question is change to fraction. Okay. Now, you have to differentiate between case number 1 and case number 2. Now, case number 2, as you can see, one digit is skipped, is not repeated. So, first, let's write the SS equation here on the side. Now, as you can see, the dot is only on the 3. The new thing in this example is that I added this one over here. Do I panic? Do the steps change? No, the steps are exactly the same. So, my decimal is going to be 1.23333. This is my SS equation. Always remember that the SS equation is the one that you multiply with the 10 or 100 or 1,000, whatever. Okay. What is my priority? My priority is to get this digit before the point. The furthest digit, which is repeated. Now, this digit that is repeated is the third. Is the second. Is the second after the decimal place. Since it's the second, so I multiply by 100. It's like the previous example, okay? So 100 times x is 100x. And then this decimal, or actually this number multiplied by 100, this number, not the decimal, this number multiplied by 100 is going to be 123.33333. Now, you need to first ask yourself, let me just use a highlighter, compare the decimals, compare the decimal part. If they are the same, so you immediately place the SS equation as equation number 2. If they're not the same, then you have to change them so that they're the same. And as you can see, I have again one digit not repeated over here, which is extra. So I multiply this equation again by 10. Why do I multiply it by 10? So that the decimal part is the same. Of course, you multiply the whole thing as we said so many times. So 10 times x is 10x. And then 1.23333 times 10 is 12.3333. Now, as you can see, the decimal parts here are the same. So that when you subtract, it becomes super easy. Now subtract. 100 minus 10 is 90x. And then subtract the whole numbers. 123 minus 12 is 111. And then solve for x. X equals 111 over 90. If you wish to change to mixed number, you can do that. 111 divide 90. This is the simple. Oh, actually, it's not the simplest form. The simplest form is 37 over 30. Okay. If you wish to change to mixed number, if you wish to change to decimal, of course, you will get the same answer, which is 1.23333. Okay, moving on to more examples about case number. Okay, moving on to this example over here, we're going to solve two examples related to part B, and then we'll move on to the last part of the video, which is the algebraic part or the tricky questions. Now, as we said, create the base equation or the SS equation on the side. Now, the third digit over here is repeated, 0.56666, and so on. And this, again, is called the base equation or the SS equation, okay? كنت عايزة أقول إيه؟ You can pause the video and actually solve this question and see if you get the idea. Okay, now, as we said, the priority is to move the furthest digit on the right. Sorry. The priority is to check the last digit repeated and move before the point. أشوف مين آخر رقم متكرر. آخر رقم متكرر هنا عندي التالت. So I multiply by 1,000. The last digit here repeated is the third. Since it's the third, so I multiply by 1,000. Multiply the whole thing. 1,000 times x is 1,000x. And 1,000 times this decimal is 456.6666. Now, before you decide whether the SS equation is going to be equation number 2 or not, as we said, compare the decimals. Now, as you can see, the decimals are definitely not the same. And we have 2 digits difference. So, as we said in example 1 and example 2, because we had 1 digit different, we multiplied the SS again by 10. But now I have 2 digits different. Okay, عندي 2 زيادة. So if I have 2 digits, what do you think we're going to multiply with? Of course, we're going to multiply the SS again by 100. عشان عندي هنا رقمين فارقين. فأنا لو عندي رقم واحد فارق بعمل times 10. رقمين فارقين times 100. So 100 times x is 100x, and this you place it as equation number 2. 100 times the decimal is going to be 45.6666. وزي ما اتفقنا يا جماعة مهم جدا إن الدecimal parts يبقوا زي بعض. It's very important that the decimal part is the same because it will be much easier for you to solve. Now we subtract بقى خلاص 1,000 minus 100. 900 باين. 1,000 minus 100 is 900. عندي مشكلة مع mental skills تخيلوا. Okay, and then the whole numbers subtracted from one another, 456 minus 45, which is 411. Solve for x. X equals 411 over 900. See if it simplifies on the calculator. Actually, it does. 137 over 300. And you have the super button, S to D, and you will get your decimal, which is 4566666. Okay? Now, one more, just to يعني عشان يبقى ضميري بس مرتاح. أهي دي. Now, you can pause the video and you can try and do this on your own. Okay? And then the last part of this video is going to be the algebraic part with the tricky question. Okay. So, again, I'm going to write the SS equation over here. And again, the SS equation is your decimal expanded. آخد الدecimal وأفكه. Now, as you can see, the last 2 are repeated. Okay? طب إيه بقى الهيصة دي? Do I multiply by 1,000 ولا by 1 and 4 zeros? Guys, I always check the last digit repeated. آخر رقم متكرر على اليمين. The last digit repeated is the 4th. Since the last digit is repeated, so I multiply by 1 and 4 zeros. I multiply by 1 and 4 zeros. ببص على آخر واحد على اليمين متكرر. So you end up with 1,000x equals 2345. Please remember to do this part either mentally or on the calculator. Okay? If you remember, if you want to do it mentally, just move it to the right 4 times. So it ends up with 2345.454545. Super easy, yeah. خلي الدوت دي هنا. Okay? Dot 4545. Because the objective is to just take all this and put before the point, and then the 4, 5 will be repeated. And then again, now by comparing the decimal parts, okay, this part and this part, you'll find that I have 2 extras here, 2 digits that are not repeated. عندي رقمين فارقين. So if I have 2 numbers now that are different, so you multiply by 100. So as we said, the first multiplication is to get the decimal repeated before the point. The second multiplication is for your decimal part to be the same. And then we do the multiplication عادي بقى كده. خلاص. You want to, if you wish to write 45 as many as you want, it's totally up to you. Please show that you are subtracting. Show that you are subtracting. Show the examiner that you are subtracting. Okay, 1000x minus 100x is 900x. 1000 minus 100, 900x equals 2345 minus 23, which is 2, 3. أنا في حاجة عاملاها مش مظبوطة ولا إيه؟ 4 zeros. This is 3 zeros over here. شفتوا بقى الغلطة دي؟ ما أنا بقول أنا عملت حاجة غريبة. Sorry guys. 1 and 4 zeros. أيوة كده. 1 and 4 zeros. Please be aware of these mistakes. أنا هو عملت غلطة. 4 أصفار minus 100. Okay, so 9900. X equals to 2345 minus 23, which is 2322. And then the remaining is the same, 2322 over 900. Let's see if this simplifies. Actually, it does. It simplifies into 129 over 550. Change to decimal, 23454545. Yes, correct. Very good. Okay. So this is case number 2, and I guess you can tell the difference between case 1 and case number 2. Okay. Okay. The last part of our topic today is part C, which is the algebraical part. And these are 2 questions that came along the years. الفكرة يا جماعة كلها في edexcel إن هو يعني أحيانا بيجيب لك فكرة جت من 20 سنة وبعد كده يرجع يجيبها من يومين 3 كده. فملوش كرايتيريا كده. فاحنا كل اللي احنا بنحاول نعمله ان احنا بنحاول نلم الايدياز كلها على اساس انه يبقى عندي كل الافكار. Okay, so what I was saying is that I try as much as I can to put all the ideas that came across the years related to a certain topic. Maybe that's why my videos are a bit long. Okay, so one of the ideas that came recently actually is 0.4x dot. Okay, now these are the algebraic questions, as you can see. Of course, any algebraic question means it has letters included. واللي أنا عايزة أقوله يا جماعة إنه إحنا we do not need to panic if the question changes to an algebraic question. دايما العيال يتوتروا، إيه يا مس ده؟ إيه اللي حصل؟ إحنا مش متعودين على مش عارفة إيه اللي حصل ده ومين اللي جاب إكس في الموضوع. دلوقتي إحنا شرحنا الدرس ده بطريقة معينة وهي دي طريقة الحل. المسألة بقى algebraic، المسألة numerical، المسألة shapes، المسألة بطيخ، هتتحل بنفس الطريقة. خلاص هم نفس الطريقة ونفس الكونسبت. So you do not need to panic if the question changes into an algebraic question because you already know how to solve. And the steps of solving will not change no matter even if the examiner included shapes in your question. فدي كانت واحدة. And the second is this 0.0 as far as I remember. Yeah. Okay, these are 2 major examples. قبل كده. So we're just going to discuss them again. Now let's remember again how to solve these questions. Now, as we said, we create 2 equations and you subtract. See, so the procedure is the same. It doesn't change. طيب هنا بقى. Now, please remember that whenever the question is weird for you, okay, the SS equation or the base equation, always remember to write it on the side. طبعا هنا, as we said, the SS equation is an equation in which you select any letter that you want, and then on the right-hand side, you take the decimal and you expand it. But we're not going to select the letter to be X. Let's just select A, for instance. So the SS equation here is going to be A equals, since the dots are here, يبقى only these 2 letters are repeated, 0.0 XY, 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 and so on. And remember, as we said so many times, that we multiply the SS equation by a power of 10. Okay? The priority is the last digit repeated over here is the third. So since it's the third, I must multiply by 1,000. Yeah, miss, what is the question? The question is change to fraction. And the question here is change to fraction. That's the question of the day. Okay. So 1,000 times A is 1,000A. And then 1,000 times the decimal is XY. Please remember, move to the right 3 times, as you cannot put this on the calculator. So XY dot XY XY XY. للمرة بقى ال50 أكيد أنتوا زهقتوا أصلا مني. Before you decide to put the SS equation as equation number 2, you must compare the decimals. If the decimals are the same, أو واخداها حطها على طول automatically. If the decimals are the same, you take the SS equation and you place it as equation number 2 immediately. If the decimals are not the same, then you have to fix this problem. How do I fix this problem? This 0 is extra. I have 1 digit extra between these two. So to get rid of this digit, I multiply by a 10. Okay? So 10 times A is 10A. 10 times the decimal, طبعا it will move once to the right, هتبقى 0 dot XY XY. If you wish to put another XY, it's totally up to you. See بقى, why is it important over here so that the decimal parts are the same? Because if this is an algebraic question, you will never be able to subtract. And then we do the exact same steps. Okay, 1,000 minus 10 is 990A. XY minus 0 is simply XY. So A is XY over 990. And this is the fraction form of this decimal over here. This is the fraction form of this decimal over here. The last example of the day is this example over here, which is a bit tricky. Now, let me give you first a numerical example about very, very simple example from زمان قوي. لو أنا جيت قلت لكم 0.2 plus 0.03. If I give you such a numerical question and I asked you to add. Now, remember, of course, that when you add the 10th together and then you add the 100. So this will simply change into 0.23. Type. What if it was written 0.2 plus 0.0x? Now, what difference will it make? It's going to be 0.2, and then you add the 10th together. And then remember that the 100th here is 0. So when you add these two together, هتبقى 0.2x. Okay? Type. What if it was written, okay, 0.2 plus 0.0x dot? What would this change into? 0.2x dot. No difference whatsoever. Okay? So the question here says change to fraction in its simplest form. Sometimes I do tend to forget the question title. Change to fraction. Okay? So this must be expanded into its origin. 0.4x dot is 0.4 plus 0.0x dot. And this question actually came recently. I don't remember actually which year, بس ده جه قريب. Now, if I want to change this into a fraction, now this is easily changed into a fraction. 0.4 is 4 over 10. If you wish to simplify it, okay. If you wish to leave it as it is, it's okay. Okay. Now, let's change this part over here into a decimal using the same exact concept. بنفس الطريقة بدون أي اختلاف. Let's create the SS equation first. طبعا we're not going to select x equal because we already used the letter x here. So the SS equation is A equals 0.0xxxx. Now, without going into a lot of details, since the last digit repeated is the second, so I multiply by 100. So this would be 100x equals x dot xxx. And of course, with algebraic questions, you can never place these under each other, okay? The decimals must be the same. So I multiply here by 10 because I have an extra digit which is repeated. So 10 times A, sorry, 10 دي 10A هنا, sorry. 10a, 100a, and this would be 10a, is 0.xxx. Now I can easily subtract. 100 minus 10 is 90a. X minus 0 is x, so a is x over 90. A lot of questions say, Miss طب أنا I will memorize it. لا يعني أنا ساعتها بقى يعني مثلا هحفظها. مع حبيبي أنا بقول لك الصح، أنت بقى عايز تحفظها أنت حر. في ناس ما هي لو تاني واحد يبقى هعمل تايمز كذا وكذا، لو تالت واحد هعمل تايمز كذا وتايمز كذا. ما هو أنت لازم تبقى فاهم الفكرة عشان لو السؤال جه ملفوف شوية نعرف نتصرف. So 0.0x dot, the fraction form is x over 90. Now, the question says, change to a single fraction, meaning I must combine these two into one fraction, applying the same denominator. طبعا how? I multiply here by 9 up and down. So this will change into 36 over 90 plus x over 90. Please remember that when you add two fractions with the same denominator, you do not add the denominator, so the denominator is 90, and you add up. طب يا miss, what is the answer of 36 plus x? 36 plus x. What is the answer? The answer is 36 plus x, مش 36x. 36x دي بتيجي منين؟ لو 36 times x. This changes into 36x. But when you add, this is the simplest form. There's nothing to be done about it. So back to here. So when I add up, this will change into 36. Okay? 36 plus x. Okay? This is the simplest form, or this is the single fraction of 0.4x dot. Okay, طبعا I hope that this video was useful to you. Like this example over here, اللي هو ده. Okay, if you ever watch any of my videos related to past paper solutions, you will find that I have explained this example over here several times before. So let me just go through it real quick. 0.4x dot is 0.4 plus 0.0x dot. This, you change it into a fraction using these steps over here, which was discussed so many times in the video. And this changed into x over 90. Hena, in this step over here, we just did the same denominator, which is multiplying by 9, up and down, the red fraction. You end up with 36 over 90. Of course, remember that you only add up. So 36 plus x is 36 plus x, and the denominator is 90, doesn't change. Thank you all, and I hope that this video was useful to you, and I'll see you in the next videos. But before that, if you wish to solve more questions related to recurring decimals and you have my resources, you can solve in classifieds part 2 and 4, as I have 4 classifieds. Classifieds part 2 and 4, and you can actually check the index for recurring decimals, and you'll find the page number over there. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.